Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're looking at a really interesting collection of discoveries.
Yeah, we've got some really fascinating stuff to talk about.
Yeah, from AI that's maybe not as smart as we thought, to maybe a new early warning system for volcanoes,
Mm.
and even a look at ancient Earth and mosquito mating rituals.
A lot of variety this time. Should be a good one.
I think so. Let's get right into it.
Sounds good.
So first up is this AI stuff. It seems like every day there's a new headline about how AI is going to change the world. And it probably will, but one of the things I always wonder is how much these AI systems actually understand.
Yeah, that's a big question right now, especially with these large language models. They're really good at mimicking human language. But do they really grasp the concepts behind the words?
Right, like are they thinking or just repeating?
Exactly. Well, there was a study where researchers tried to get to the bottom of this. They gave a large language model a seemingly simple task, giving driving directions in New York City.
Okay, so something that any New Yorker could do.
Right, and you'd think that to give accurate directions, you'd need at least some understanding of the city's layout.
Yeah, you'd have to know where the streets are, right?
You'd think so. But get this, the AI aced the test, gave perfect directions every time.
So it understood the city.
Well, not so fast. When they dug a little deeper, they found something pretty strange. The AI wasn't actually building an accurate mental map of the city.
What do you mean?
It was more like it had this map full of imaginary streets and shortcuts, like paths that don't exist in reality.
So, like it was playing a video game version of NYC.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so interesting about this. It shows that AI can appear to be working perfectly, even when it doesn't truly understand the tasks.
It's like it found a cheat code or something.
Right. And that's a little worrying when you think about it.
Yeah, what happens if that cheat code stops working?
Exactly. So these researchers, they're trying to come up with ways to test these world models that AI systems create. They want to see if the AI can really distinguish between similar but different situations.
I guess that makes sense. You don't want your self-driving car taking you into a lake because it thinks there's a bridge there.
Uh-huh. Right.
Okay, so that's AI. A little smarter, a little weirder than we thought. Next up, let's talk volcanoes. Specifically, the Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai eruption. I mean, that was just incredible, wasn't it?
It was absolutely massive, something we haven't seen in a long time. The sheer amount of energy released, it's mind-boggling.
Like, how much water vapor did it put into the atmosphere?
Oh, man, it was something crazy, like 58,000 Olympic swimming pools worth.
58,000? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and then the tsunamis, the lightning storms, it was a global event.
It really makes you realize the power of nature, huh?
Absolutely.
But here's the thing that I found really interesting. Scientists might have found a way to predict these kinds of eruptions, or at least get some warning.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So they discovered a certain type of seismic wave. It was detected about 15 minutes before the main eruption.
Seismic waves are pretty common with volcanoes, though.
I know, but this one was different. It was picked up by sensors hundreds of miles away, like way further than usual.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's what led them to this theory. They think this wave was caused by a fracture in the Earth's crust, right under the volcano. This fracture let seawater rush in and mix with the magma.
So you're saying massive amounts of cold water suddenly mixing with molten rock?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no wonder it blew.
Right.
That's a fascinating theory, but it does make sense. And if we could learn to detect these specific waves, it could give us valuable time to prepare.
Especially for those island nations near these volcanoes, it could save lives.
Absolutely. Early warning is everything in these situations.
It's all about understanding the science, right?
Exactly.
Speaking of understanding the science, let's go way back in time for a minute. Back to ancient Earth like 650 million years ago.
Yeah.
What did our planet even look like back then?
Oh, it was a completely different world. We're talking about a time just after a global ice age. CO2 levels were going crazy. Temperatures were swinging all over the place.
Sounds chaotic.
It was. Definitely not a place you'd want to be without a good parka and a lot of sunscreen.
So how did anything survive?
That's where it gets really interesting. See, scientists don't think it was a simple uniform melt. Instead, they're picturing something more like a giant slushy.
A slushy? What do you mean?
Well, imagine these huge rivers of glacial meltwater flowing into a super salty ocean.
So not just ice melting, but these massive flows of water.
Exactly. And the ocean, it was far saltier than anything we see today.
Wow, I can't even imagine that.
It's a wild concept, isn't it?
So how did they figure this out?
They looked at ancient rocks, and they found that rocks formed near the shore where all this fresh water would have been. They were chemically different from rocks further out.
So like the fresh water left a distinct mark.
That's right. And it all points to this idea of a highly stratified ocean with layers of fresh and salt water not fully mixing.
It's like someone tried to make a giant saltwater, freshwater cocktail.
Haha. Yeah, something like it.
And this wasn't just a brief period, right?
No, this slushy Earth phase lasted for millions of years.
Wow. And this was all happening while life was evolving.
It makes you wonder how those early organisms adapted to such extreme and constantly changing conditions.
That's a question for another deep dive, I think. But it's incredible to think about, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's so much we still don't know about our planet's history.
Okay, so we've covered AI that might be faking it, volcanoes with potential warning signals, and a slushy Earth. What else is on the menu for today?
Well, how about we zoom in from the planetary scale to something a bit smaller? Let's talk about mosquitoes.
Okay, I'm already itching, but go on.
I promise this is more interesting than just swatting them away. We're going to look at their mating rituals, specifically those of the Aedes aegypti mosquito.
Before we all run for the hills, this isn't about how to avoid getting bitten, is it?
Haha, no, not this time. This is about understanding their behavior, and it's actually quite fascinating.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, it all starts with sound. Male and female mosquitoes actually produce different sounds while they fly. It's all about the beating of their wings.
So it's like a mosquito symphony out there.
You could say that. And these sounds are crucial to their mating dance.
So they're serenading each other.
In a way, yes.
But how important is hearing in all of this?
Well, that's what scientists wanted to know. Could they still mate if they couldn't hear each other?
I mean, good question, but how do you even test that?
They got clever. They used gene editing to create mosquitoes that were completely deaf.
Deaf mosquitoes. Is that even possible?
It is. They targeted a specific gene that's essential for their hearing. Mosquitoes actually hear with their antenna, and this gene controls how those sensory organs work.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right. So they basically switched off this gene and created these deaf mosquitoes.
Okay, so what happened when they put them together?
Here's where it gets interesting. The deaf females could still mate, although it took them a bit longer.
So they could work around it.
Yeah, they could eventually find the males. But the deaf males, that's a different story.
What happened to them?
They were completely unsuccessful.
They couldn't mate at all.
Not at all. They just couldn't locate the females, let alone start any kind of courtship.
So hearing is absolutely essential for the males.
It seems so. They need to be able to hear those female wing beat frequencies to find them and to start the mating process.
So it's not just about finding the females.
No, there's more to it. You see, scientists had noticed this behavior in Aedes aegypti mosquitoes called rapid frequency modulation, or RFM for short.
What is that?
It's basically where the males rapidly change their wing beat frequency during courtship.
Like they're sending a special signal.
Exactly. And the researchers found that the deaf males couldn't do this RFM.
Because they couldn't hear the females to adjust their own wing beats.
Precisely. It's like a high-speed duet, and the deaf males were missing half the music.
This is all so fascinating. But what does it mean for us?
Well, aside from giving us a newfound appreciation for mosquito mating rituals, it could lead to new ways of controlling their populations.
How so?
Imagine if we could disrupt their mating behavior, prevent them from reproducing in the first place.
That would be huge.
It would be a game changer in our fight against mosquito-borne diseases. Dengue fever, Zika, malaria, all of that.
All because we learned how mosquitoes flirt.
Pretty much.
Wow, you never know where scientific curiosity will lead, huh?
You said it.
It's amazing to think that something as seemingly simple as mosquito mating could have such huge implications.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered AI, volcanoes, a slushy Earth, and now mosquito mating. What's next on our deep dive adventure?
Well, how about we take a look at something a little closer to home? Let's talk about the human brain.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Great! Because there's been some really interesting research lately on how our brains process information. And it turns out we might not be as good at multitasking as we think we are.
Oh, really? I thought I was a master multitasker.
Haha. Well, most of us think that. But the science says otherwise.
Okay, I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Let's do it. It's amazing how we can go from these massive global events like volcanoes to the tiny world of mosquitoes and still find these mind-blowing discoveries.
Right. It's like no matter what scale you're looking at, there's always something new and incredible to learn. Speaking of tiny but incredible, we're going to stick with mosquitoes for a bit longer and delve into their fascinating mating rituals.
Yes, the love songs of the Aedes aegypti.
Okay, before anyone starts picturing romantic mosquito serenades under the moonlight, let's be clear. This is the species known for spreading diseases like dengue fever and Zika. Not exactly the most cuddly creatures.
True, but their mating behavior is surprisingly complex and crucial for understanding how to control their populations. And it all revolves around sound.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about these mosquito love songs.
Well, both male and female Aedes aegypti mosquitoes produce distinct sounds while they're flying, created by the beating of their wings. These sounds are essential for them to find and recognize potential mates.
So it's like a mosquito dating app, but instead of swiping left or right, they're listening for the right buzz.
Haha, in a way, yes. But scientists were curious about just how important hearing is in this process. Could mosquitoes still mate if they couldn't hear each other?
It's a fascinating question. How do you even go about testing that? Do you put tiny noise-canceling headphones on them?
Not quite. They used a gene editing technique to create mosquitoes that were completely deaf.
Wait, deaf mosquitoes? How is that even possible?
It's pretty amazing, actually. They targeted a specific gene called TRPVA, which is essential for the mosquito's hearing. You see, mosquitoes hear using their antennae, which are covered in tiny sensory organs that detect sound vibrations. This TRPVA gene is crucial for those sensory organs to work correctly.
So by switching off this gene, they essentially created mosquitoes that couldn't hear a thing.
Exactly, and then they set up a series of mating experiments to see what would happen.
Okay, so what did they find? Could these deaf mosquitoes still find love?
The results were quite surprising. They found that deaf female mosquitoes were still able to mate, although it took them a bit longer than their hearing counterparts.
So the females could work around it.
It seems so. They were eventually able to locate the males, perhaps through other cues like visual or olfactory signals, but the real shocker came when they tested the deaf males.
Oh, what happened to the males?
The deaf males were completely unsuccessful at mating. They simply couldn't locate and court the females.
Wow, so hearing is absolutely essential for the males to find a mate.
It appears so. Specifically, the ability to detect the unique wingbeat frequencies produced by the females. It's like someone turned off the music at a dance. Suddenly, the males have no idea who to approach or how to start the courtship ritual.
So it's more than just hearing in general. It's about hearing those specific female wingbeat frequencies.
Precisely. And this discovery gets even more interesting when you consider a behavior called rapid frequency modulation, or RFM.
RFM, what is that?
It's a fascinating phenomenon that scientists had observed before but didn't fully understand. During courtship, male mosquitoes will rapidly change their wingbeat frequency, almost as if they're singing a special song to the females.
So it's not just about hearing the female. The males actually have to adjust their own wing beats in response, like they're trying to harmonize with each other.
Exactly. It's like a complex, high-speed duet, all done through the buzzing of their wings. And the researchers found that the deaf males couldn't perform this RFM behavior.
Because they couldn't hear the female to adjust their own wing beats.
Exactly. They were missing half of the conversation. This further reinforces how crucial hearing, and specifically the detection of those female wingbeat frequencies, is for the entire mating process.
This is all so fascinating. But what does it mean in a practical sense? Why should we care about how mosquitoes find love?
Well, aside from giving us a newfound appreciation for the complexities of the natural world, it could have some significant real-world applications. Understanding how mosquitoes find and choose their mates could lead to entirely new strategies for controlling their populations.
Okay, that makes sense. What kind of strategies are we talking about?
Imagine if we could develop methods to disrupt their mating behavior, preventing them from reproducing in the first place. Perhaps by using sound traps that mimic female wingbeat frequencies to lure males away from potential mates, or by figuring out how to block their ability to perform RFM, essentially making them tongue-tied in the mosquito dating world.
So we could outsmart these tiny insects by understanding the language of their love songs.
Exactly, and this could have a major impact on our efforts to control mosquito-borne diseases. We're talking about the potential to save countless lives by preventing the spread of diseases like dengue fever, Zika virus, and malaria.
It's incredible to think that such a tiny creature could hold the key to such significant solutions. It just goes to show that scientific curiosity, even about seemingly insignificant topics, can lead to truly world-changing discoveries.
Couldn't agree more. It's a testament to the power of basic research and the interconnectedness of knowledge. Who would have thought that studying mosquito mating rituals could help us fight global pandemics?
It's definitely a reminder that there's always more to learn, and that every discovery, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect that we may not even fully comprehend yet. But for now, let's shift gears again and delve into a topic that's a little closer to home: the human brain.
Oh, that sounds fascinating. What have we learned lately about the inner workings of our own minds?
Well, it turns out we might not be as good at multitasking as we think we are.
Oh, really? I thought I was a master multitasker. Tell me more.
I know, right? I mean, we all try to juggle a million things at once, but maybe our brains aren't really built for it.
That's what the research suggests. Our brains are amazing at focusing on one thing at a time. But when we try to do multiple things at once, we actually end up switching back and forth between tasks.
And that switching takes time and energy, right?
Exactly. It's not like our brains can magically split their attention perfectly.
So we're not really multitasking, we're more like task switching.
Exactly. And that can lead to mistakes, decreased productivity, and even increased stress.
So all those times I thought I was being super efficient, I was actually just making things harder for myself.
It's possible.
So what's the solution?
Yeah.
Just focus on one thing at a time?
That's probably the most effective approach. But there are also techniques to help us manage multitasking better. Things like prioritizing tasks, breaking them down into smaller chunks, and minimizing distractions.
So it's all about being more mindful of how we're using our brain power.
Exactly.
It's amazing how much we're still learning about our own minds.
It really is.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today.
From AI to volcanoes to slushy earth to mosquito mating rituals and even the limits of multitasking. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And it just goes to show that there's always something new and fascinating to discover.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, keep that curiosity alive.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next deep dives.
We'll see you then.
Bye, everyone.